All right, are we ready? Welcome to the November 10th policy session. And Gary, what's on the policy session first?
Well, let's make sure you're all here, commissioners. Chair Bernard.
Here.
Commissioner Savis.
Here.
Commissioner Humberston.
Here.
Commissioner Fisher.
Here.
Commissioner Schrader.
She is here, but
stepped away. All right, we'll start with wildfires update. We have Nancy Bush, Director of Disaster Management and Incident Commander of our Emergency Operations Center. Please go ahead, Nancy.
All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you. So we're going to look at some of the data that we have across the state, and then we'll look at specifically Clackamas County data, which we just started getting this week. So this will be new information for you for sure. So overall, statewide, there's 24,526 that have registered for individual assistance in the state of Oregon. 23,762 of those are valid registrations. And those registration breakdowns are that 6,711 are owners, 17,029 are renters, and 22 are unspecified at this time. 416 assistant max grants have been provided for that entire group, which means that they got the entire amount of $35,500 because of the loss that they have suffered. And you can get anything up to that. So, but for some reason they count separately those that have gotten the max grant. So the total of the assistance, housing assistance that has been provided here in the state of Oregon is 19,296,588, which is a average of 11,853 per recipient. Other needs assessment, which includes everything from they may need food, they may need some replacement of things that were in the home, that kind of stuff. So that total is 5,356,499 with, and that's 2,291 average. So there's quite a bit of money, FEMA money that's been coming into our individuals here in the state of Oregon. The age groups of those that are recipients are 3,530 or age 65 and older. Low income is 3,239. And those with access and functional needs is 1,741, which is self-identified. Here in Clackamas County, we have 2,303 that have registered. And at this time, we have 2,303 that are valid registrations. We have 924 of those are owners, 1,337 of those are renters, and we have 42 that are unspecified at this time. And that's because 40 of these just came in this morning and they haven't taken a look at those to see if they qualify or not. The assistant max grant is at 2 here in Clackamas County. So we have 2 that have received the $35,500 maximum grant. We have for the housing assistance amount here in Clackamas County is a total of $313,174, which is 4,447 average. And the other needs assessment is $144,478, which is 1,214 average. Those identified with vulnerabilities, there's age 65 and older is 373. Low income is 441. And access and functional needs is 226. And again, that is self-identified. I also just want to mention that the Household Hazardous Waste Program, I know I talked about this a little bit last week. We're planning on them starting this week. So we think they're going to start today or tomorrow. So again, we're making sure that we're getting information out to the residents in that area, that there will be teams out there doing that cleanup. They have the right-of-way entry forms for those that have signed those. So obviously they'll go to those properties first. And probably as in other, in other counties, as people see them clean up, they actually might get more right-of entry forms to do more cleanup, which they do allow at that time. So that's going on. And then our, the public right-of-way cleaning, we are working with the state of Oregon at this time. We do know the state of Oregon has their contract bids out right now. We have heard that they have hired at least one contractor that's going to oversee the process. We have not had a lot of discussion about who that is or how we are going to be working with them, but I anticipate those conversations starting later this week or early next week. And as far as I know, we still have not heard from FEMA to say that personal property is approved, but I'm checking on that again today, but I have not heard back yet. And that is my update for wildland fire.
I don't see any questions. Go
Very
ahead.
good. No? So Nancy, will you provide a coronavirus update, please?
Okay. So as everyone knows, our numbers have been going up. So I'll be talking about that in a few minutes and about the pause that we received that we know that we're going into. We received that information yesterday. But first, for our numbers. So Oregon has 51,155 positives, 734 deaths, 522 negatives. Clackamas County has 3,992 positives with 71 deaths and 82,129 negatives. Multnomah County has 11,348 positives, 185 deaths, 191,247 negatives. Washington County, 7,014 positives, 88 deaths, 122,379 negatives. Statewide, we now have 269 hospitalizations. And I know one of the concerns is hospitalizations is going up, and that is up 89 from this time last week. We now have 55 in ICU beds. That's actually down 2 from last week. And we have 26 on ventilators, which is the same as last week. Right now, we have 191 adult ICU beds available statewide, or at least that's what we had late yesterday, I should say. 737 vents are now available. We had 112 cases yesterday, and we're holding at around 250 that have not been interviewed yet, and which we'll see that reflected in our metrics that'll be coming later in the week. This week, our case count was 517 cases, which is 122 cases per 100,000. We have 62 outbreaks as of 11/9 that we've been working. There are 26 of those are workplace, 6 are food or farm, 23 are long-term care facilities or retirement. There's none in daycare at this time. Schools is 2, religious facilities is 1, healthcare 1, social 2, and other 1. Again, that's a total of 62. So as we talked a little bit, I mentioned that we were put on pause yesterday. The governor sent out the information that she was adding counties, and the current counties that are on pause, which is effective November 11th through the 25th, is Baker, Clackamas, Jackson, Malheur, Marion, Multnomah, Umatilla, Union, and Washington. And just to refresh everyone's memory, if you did not read the media release, what the 2-week measures include is urging businesses to mandate work from home to the greatest extent possible, pausing long-term care facility visits that take place indoors to protect staff and the residents, reducing maximum restaurant capacity to 50 people, including customers and staff, for indoor dining with a maximum party size of 6, and continuing to encourage outdoor dining and takeout. Reducing the maximum capacity of indoor activities to 50 people, includes gyms, fitness organizations, studios, bowling alleys, ice rinks, indoor sports, pools, and museums. And limiting social gatherings to your household or no more than 6 people if the gathering includes those from outside your household, and reducing the frequency of social gatherings significantly in the 2-week period, and keeping the same 6 people in your social gathering circle if at all possible. So I just also want to mention, let's see here, that as we are going into the pause, we are seeing our numbers increasing quite dramatically, like a 38% over 1 week to the next. which is why we probably were put on pause. We here at Clackamas County are struggling, of course, because we do have 250 that we have not been able to interview because of the lack of staff, things coming in so quickly. Staff are, we're still hiring staff. We're bringing more staff in that did this at first that are county employees to also help. But here we are actually prioritizing cases. And so here, I'm just going to read it off what we're prioritizing at this time. So first, a temporary pausing workplace notifications. Exceptions are the long-term care facilities and congregate living. And we're asking the case to notify their employer at this time. We are collecting contact information only truly for those that are close contacts. So we are not doing the contacts of the close contacts. We're only doing the close contacts at this time, which is what we were doing early on in the outbreak. And outbreak management will be temporarily put on hold with similar exceptions for long-term care facilities and congregate living and larger outbreaks that we have here in the county. All of these we hope to be temporary adjustments, but we do have to make these adjustments. And we're working with OHA as we move forward. So again, hopefully they'll be temporary and we can get back to the full contact tracing very soon. So that is my update here for COVID, which is not pretty today.
All right, Paul and then Sonia.
Yeah, well, thank you, Nancy. The numbers are pretty disappointing that we're experiencing, and I think you alluded to 112. And I'm gathering as I pick up, whether it's yourself or Philip, from time to time mention the case counts. I'm realizing maybe that the daily reports that the OHA puts out are probably a day behind.
They are.
Yeah, because yesterday it was 68, the day before was about 127 or 28, I believe.
Yeah.
So we're seeing that about 24-hour difference. So
Yes.
that tells me that the report we'll see will be in the neighborhood that you mentioned when it goes
Yeah.
out statewide. So, I guess in a way that's, you all have staff around the state has a little bit more insight as to what's coming and what's trending when we see these spikes. Very sad and very disappointing. I think it's now, we're listening to the science around the country and everyone opining on this. It's clearly evident that this is an airborne disease and or it spreads or transmission through airborne. And it's not just droplets, right? It's actually fine mist that's in the air. And my previous world, we set up clean rooms and made sure we had an air change frequency that about every 2 minutes the air was basically evacuated. Which that means is that if you can imagine all the room in the air being evacuated completely out every 2 minutes, for example, as one example, that's a pretty frequent air change. But in these homes or hospitals or wherever it may be, gathering places, that's a joint ventilation system. And if people are congregating in a joint ventilation system, that means that air is being shared, and that's where it gets dangerous. So I think the limiting the numbers and listening to the governor's words yesterday, it's hard to put a specific number, I think, and not take into account the size of the building or the structure, right? I would say that limiting it to 50 people in a 5,000 square foot building is quite different than 50 people in a 10,000 square foot building, right, with ventilation. So I would just say or suggest maybe to pass on that there ought to be some scaling of those people, because I would not want to see 50 people in a 10,000 square foot building. For example, I would be more comfortable in a much larger building, if you will. All that said, I guess we're going to have to be careful and educate people. And I think maybe the public messaging ought to be more about internal ventilation aspects, opening windows and so forth. And of course, that just means in cold weather, turning the heat up and spending more money on energy. And if people can't afford that, that's going to be kind of dangerous. But I think there ought to be some kind of accommodation for facilities that have really sophisticated air handling systems, if they can actually demonstrate that they've got a science-based approved air change system or ventilation system that protects people. And acknowledging the ones that are more dangerous, but I'll stop there.
Tanya?
Yeah, Paul, I think that's really interesting. I had some questions, but I would really love to hear Nancy weigh in on what kinds of conversations are going on about really the public message regarding ventilation. Like what kind of air purifiers, how much of a space would an air purifier work in, like, say, a conference, like our conference room at the county building? If we had a couple air purifiers, could we have safe meetings in there? I mean, just things like that.
Yeah.
We're not hearing about it in, we're hearing wear a mask, wash your hands, stay 6 feet apart. Is there going to be any effort to have a conversation about that?
So interesting you bring that up, because last Friday, OSHA sent out some new guidelines for work spaces. And one of those things was about air circulation. And I don't have that memorized. I don't have it in front of me, but something came out Friday. Mr. Schmidt heard about it yesterday, and I investigated it. It's like, sure enough, it was there, but I think it got lost probably in the media frenzy that was going on Friday. So we are sending that out to our communities to make sure that they understand that information is there, what OSHA is now expecting. And we here at the county as an employer will be looking at that too. But there has been all along, there has been guidance around this air circulation in public spaces. And that is reiterated again in that OSHA document that is now going around again too. The compliance for that particular one that was sent out on Friday is November 16th. So there's that conversation. You're right, we haven't heard it a lot. A lot of it's been in that background with OSHA and with employers and public spaces.
Yeah, well, it might be time to simplify the information and to get it out through our chambers and our different networks, because it's confusing. And to try to find guidance in those documents specifically is nearly impossible for a typical person. I mean, it's really, really hard.
Yeah, I agree. When I was reading it, I'm like, wow. And then I got another document which we're sending out too that simplified it.
Yeah, well, I would love to be kept updated on that, especially I think for all of us, we interface with our business community. And
yeah, I'm happy to share what I got yesterday in the simplified version, and I can send it out to the BCC.
That'd be great. So my question, I didn't understand when you were talking about long-term care facilities and contact tracing. Are you saying that we are not doing contact tracing and we're having the state do that? Or
No.
what? I didn't understand what you were saying.
Yeah, so what we're doing is just contact tracing with close contacts. So I'll use me as an example. If I'm infected and all of us here are at a party, then we'll do contact tracing with all of you because you're a close contact of mine that you were in, with me at this period of time, blah, blah, blah. But I will not talk to Commissioner Fisher and say, when who have you been into contact with, and reach out another layer. So it's just that close contact. However, the exception is the long-term care facilities and where we have any kind of congregate gatherings. So those two will still be the same.
Okay, so then in those settings, we continue to do the contacts of the contacts.
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm so glad
Yes.
I asked, because I thought we were scaling back what we were doing because we're
not at the long-term care facility. No.
To get the information entered, and just the everything is increasing. So I really appreciated, Nancy. Julie sent an email out explaining some of the numbers to all of us, and I really appreciate having that explanation. So I just wanted to state that.
Yeah, thank you.
So I would say, Paul, what you were talking about, the size of buildings is something we're talking about. One size doesn't fit all. So a larger building that could accommodate 100 people safely with the proper filtration is different than a smaller building that can accommodate 50 people safe. That's the metric we're trying to work through with the Tri-County folks. Also, then yesterday I was hearing that, really, if we invested in the schools and put air filtration units in each classroom and limited the size, we probably could open schools and required masks and hand washing and all that other stuff. We probably could, but that investment is not being made. The other thing is that this money runs out at the end of the year. What happens then? And when I suggested to Deborah that we need to ask the governor for more resources, she just laughed. I don't see those resources coming. Well, they might come, because I'd say the governor's being really careful about not rolling back to zero, stay home, because of the impact on businesses. And we need to communicate loud and clear. Every opportunity we have is to follow the guidelines, because if we don't, we'll be rolling back, and that will devastate our business community. So, Paul?
Well, thanks for that, Jim. I can't help but think when it comes to the CARES Act dollars, and I think that if we had been fortunate enough to have our portion share as spelled out by the federal legislation, that it would have been smart of us to say, okay, how long do we have, what's the period of time will these dollars, this act affect, and knowing the deadline, and then what happens thereafter, we could have maybe budgeted and strategized a lot better to put ourselves in better position to deal with it. But only 3 jurisdictions in this state had that ability to have the dollars. But I will just be outspoken and say that the lack of clarity, the lack of messaging about those CARES Act dollars, I think that's really resulted in maybe some monies being distributed in areas that really didn't have that thoughtful planning and consideration. And I just, I would have managed it differently. I'll just say that, but I'm not.
Yeah, let me just tell you that the CARES money has to be spent by the end of the year. Isn't that correct, Nancy? Yeah.
Yeah, by
So
December 30th.
they really can't budget it. It's gone at the end of December. And so we need more money. I assume the governor also had to spend the money by the end of the year. So that means we're waiting for the legislature to step up or the federal government to step up to fund past December. All right. I don't see any other questions. Anything else of Nancy, Gary?
Nope. Thank you, Nancy.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Bye.
Next is
All right.
advisory board and commission appointments. Christina, would you please present?
I can. We have 2 advisory board committee appointments. The first one is for Clackamas County Community Health Council. The members voted unanimously to recommend the first term for Charles Gallia on October 28th, and this will be his first appointment. The second one is for the Portland Citizen Noise Advisory Committee. There was 1 appointment that was needed to be filled, and there was 1 recommendation for that appointment. Timothy Benz is recommended, and this is his first term.
This is the airport noise.
Yes.
Move to approve, Chairman.
There a second? I see Martha Lippin a second.
All right.
Any further discussion? Please poll us, Christina.
Commissioner Fisher has a question.
Oh, yes, Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I know Charles Gallia, so I know that he will be a good addition to the Health Council, but I was really looking forward, in his application, it references his CV, and I did not see that, and I would really like to learn more about Charles other than just knowing him as a community activist, and hoping that somebody can forward that CV to all of us. Actually, I think that would be good for us all to know. But with that, I'm happy to be polled.
All right, thanks. Christina?
I can definitely reach out to PGA and get that for you. It
Thank you,
wasn't included
Christina.
in the packet that we received, so.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, we'll start with Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Humbertston,
Aye.
Commissioner Savis,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
and Chair Bernard.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. Gary, what's up next?
Right, review of your business meeting agenda for this Thursday, November 12th. You will have a wildfire update, a COVID-19 update. We'll have a presentation on a Veterans Day proclamation and resolution. While this is one day after Veterans Day, because of how the week went, that's when you'll do your resolution. And you have a pretty short consent agenda. That is your meeting. If you have any questions on any consent agenda items, if you would please tell me in advance so I can provide that information to you before Thursday. This is a very short issues list today, so that's it, except for Commissioner Communications.
Who'd like to start? Ken?
Very short report today. Today is the United States Marine Corps birthday. Happy birthday to the United States Marine Corps. Hoorah!
And today you're interviewing people for the Fair Board too, right?
Doesn't
No,
look like,
that has been canceled.
Oh, okay, so, all right. And who would like to be next? Martha?
yeah, I've been asking Tracy to compile all the information we can gather on childcare issues. I noticed that Tualatin actually has a $250,000, it's on their website, childcare scholarships families, and I'm going to have her put that in an informational portfolio. And I'll be talking to Bridget Daisy next week to help answer some of Commissioner Savis's questions about the cost and what some of the hurdles and challenges are. And I'll make sure that we get all this information out to the entire commission. It still continues to be one of the biggest business asks, just kind of around, that we're dealing with at this point. So still trying to find out as much as we can about that and tie it to workforce and economic development and just getting kids in safe places where, we can do some prevention work as well. I'd like to have it be trauma informed. So that's kind of what I've been looking at. And there's probably a lot more, but that just is at the top of my head.
Yeah, I think that's CARES money from Washington County, isn't it? That's Tualatin's.
That's another piece of this we're looking at. The issue, though, that we have is, as Paul mentioned earlier, they got the lump sum and they got to direct it themselves.
Yes.
We really have not had that same opportunity. So we have not been able to be nimble or flexible. So to me, that's what the problem's been all along. But yeah, it's probably something we could have used it for.
Oh, yeah.
So we're looking at that too. And I have gotten a call from one of the North Clackamas School Board folks. I've called them back, Tori McVeigh. I've called them back twice. We haven't connected, and I'm just going to keep trying to connect. But I know that it's an issue North Clackamas is extremely interested in at this point. So.
All right. Thank you. Sonia?
Yeah, Rachel Prusak holds a community leaders call, which is so very interesting because it crosses over to Washington County and Clackamas County.
Right.
So I got quite the briefing on the childcare that Commissioner Schrader is talking about, and they are really struggling to get the word out that they have these funds available, and they go away at the end of December. So just want to put that out there. They're available for folks, so they should take advantage. And it raised a lot of questions for me as to how are the decisions made for, I know we didn't get a direct allocation, but we've definitely had CARES funding. How are those decisions made? And I would really love it, Gary, if not today, but when there's a moment for us to get briefed as a commission as to how through EOC are the decisions made to dedicate the CARES dollars that we did receive, because childcare has been, as Commissioner Schrader has so eloquently stated over and over and over again, thank you, Commissioner Schrader, it's been a huge need throughout this pandemic. It's just been so hard for families that have to work to try to double up and do their work and take care of their kids and teach them and do all of that. So it's been something I've also been very, very concerned about.
The other issue I'd like to mention, Gary, is the Turnkey Project. We're having a briefing on Friday. And I don't know where we are in our housing strategy in terms of even, is that something that we're going to pursue? And wouldn't that be under Brenda Durbin's, part of what she does? So I'm just kind of wondering, since we're one of the fire, impacted counties, what are we doing for that? And is there a plan from housing to even access some of the shelter dollars? Right?
Let me answer Commissioner Fisher first. So I have been emailing you, commissioners, how the money has been allocated and spent on COVID, but happy to do a verbal presentation for you and upcoming issues. And then the turnkey, we were waiting for guidance from the state, which looks like they're finally providing. So yes, our social services division, housing division, all in H3S, have been planning for how to spend these funds when they're released. And now that we have more details that just came out today, we can further clarify. And at your request, Commissioner Schrader, will add it to issues next Tuesday, so you can discuss the strategy with our staff.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to update folks. So we went through our process for the Metro Oversight Committee, and we followed our staff recommendation for folks to send over to Metro. And after we had done all of that, Portland Business Alliance had communicated back with us and said, hey, we had been working through our channels because we had these members of our organization that we really wanted to be considered. And anyway, it got lost in the translation. We didn't know at Clackamas County, that word didn't get to us, and we did all of our work. But in talking with Metro staff last week, I suggested, because Commissioner Schrader and I are going to be tag teaming and doubling up, and she's my alternate. She's going to be my co-conspirator for everything that we're going to be doing. And I think that's a really positive thing for Clackamas County. So I had suggested that I let them know flat out that Dan Fowler was our guy, that he had done such great work on homeless services. He's been a strong member of the business community, has a heart of gold, and we would not consider not having him be who we would recommend to the Portland Business Alliance. But they, everyone is in agreement that they can also tag team. So Portland Business Alliance sounds like a wonderful suggestion for a candidate that will also alternate and be tag teaming with Dan Fowler. And so far there's consensus that is the way to go. So just wanted to let you know.
So
that is what will be recommended. Metro will probably approve that this week.
So are they going to have, because one of the issues was that one of the, I can't remember his name, John Isaacson called me. And we had one of our major publishers of the Oregonian, and
yes, it's John Mayer.
It is going to be John Mayer, yeah. Then? Good. Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah,
right.
So hopefully that's all worked out. And quite frankly, I am an absolute advocate, strong advocate that our business community play a strong role in the oversight, because we need their support going forward. They were an incredible partner in developing this measure and being at the table from day one, and we need their continued involvement for this to be successful. So I'm very happy with this result and welcome the collaboration.
Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, I just want to just say that on the going back to Thursday on the short-term rental thing, I guess I want to really ask the question: is there? I'm going to digress here. So if we look at what we did with the noise ordinance, we really broke them out in two different things, right? We approved one phase and then we did the next. And as I stated on Thursday, I found more intertwining than I did separation. So if it turns out that I'm a dissenting vote on this, I want to make it clear as to why. But I just wonder if there's an appetite for trying to do a little bit more separation so I can support the put ourselves in a position where I can support the legalization or recognition and the ordinances for short-term rentals, and make it something that is not a lost effort. And I think it might, as it's currently structured, it's going to be dependent upon a second phase, which will probably go into next year. And be that as it may, but I just thought, is there an appetite for just trying to refine the proposal of 8.1, clean out some stuff that's not dependent on a future administration and a county expense of $320,000 more or less, which we may or may not really recover, which is also a concern. So is there appetite for just a proposal that cleans that out and makes it a standalone recognition of short-term rentals, ordinances and all? Or do you want to just proceed as it is and go forward with as it's written? Because if we're to make any amendments, I think it's better to make the amendments or suggestions or proposals in advance so that they're ready to go for our next hearing.
Yeah,
So
a good idea.
I guess I'm open to it as long as it doesn't complicate it and it gets done before the end of the year. I think that the fee structure, I never agreed that the fee structure was correct. I really think that a fairly inexpensive filing fee, it's manageable. I think it's too high, but I'll tell you that everybody else is worse than that by hundreds. Palm Springs is like 900 a year. So I don't know, Gary, can you look into that just a little bit? I don't want to delay this. You guys can amend it later. I want to move forward with allowing it, the use. But we also need to say there is a fee that will take place sometime next year. And maybe that's just as simple as it goes. I don't know. I'll do some research, Paul, and try to get back to you before it's back on the agenda. Okay? You're on mute.
Yeah, so Gary, when's the next hearing again? I forgot.
He doesn't.
I don't know offhand. If Christina,
Sometime in
you
December.
can look real quick, Christina, on the schedule. When is this back on the board? We already had the first reading.
The second reading is on November 25th.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's little time to ask. So maybe Jim, if you do have that appetite, maybe I can work with staff and craft something that is in alignment with what you just said. So we can do that. I definitely want to make it perfectly clear. I want to make sure that we allow short-term rentals to happen with ordinances that they are instructed to follow, in which code enforcement can act upon for the sake of neighborhood concerns and parking and all those kinds of things. So, and then maybe address a future associated registration or fee in there. So I'm just trying to get to a middle ground where we can all agree.
I would say there's one challenge to that, in order to do this right, there will have to be a fee. And if we separate them and it's not done this year, that fee may never occur. And that means that short-term rentals would occur, but there would be no structure to fund enforcement, which the community told us they really wanted. And I can assure you that I want to get short-term rental, but there also has to be the financial structure to make it work right. And I don't know that the future commission will have that ability. I mean, if you guys all the three of you stuck together, I would feel comfortable that could happen, but I'm not sure I can.
Well, so if I can if I could just build on this momentarily, I see some other hands going up. I want to just say this, is that if the fee that's collected is to enforce the neighborhood community issues of the ordinance by itself, that's a lot lower cost than it is to force another arm of this or purpose of this, which apparently is making sure they're paying their TRT. So the latter is the least expensive, or no, excuse me, the previous is the latter is the most expensive. The prior just is the least cost. So and that's what we heard. There weren't rooms full of people saying we need to have an enforcement agency to collect the TRT. We had a room full of people saying we want our neighborhood to be protected from some misbehavior and noises and parking and all those other things that are impacting neighborhoods. That's what I heard. And
I think you're missing part.
The costs are completely separate.
So right now, the issue is that Airbnb doesn't recognize Clackamas County's code because it's not allowed. If we make it allowed, then Airbnb will have to collect the tax. There's another phase to this after we create it, and that is the courts to make Airbnb collect the tax and give it to us. They are collecting the tax, but not necessarily giving it to us. So let's go to Ken, and then I'll do some research, Paul, too. Ken.
I distinctly remember that there were two components to this as far as putting it together. One obviously was to legalize and have the ability to enforce rules and regulations to help control problems in neighborhoods. And the other was in fact TRT, because there was an unfair competition situation between those people who were doing Airbnbs without collecting TRT and our hotels and motels and others that are playing by the rules. So it was a two-phase component. I'll remind everybody that we said to Gary, we want a program that is
self-sustaining or pays for
self-sustaining. More importantly, that it followed our policy of full cost recovery, which is what has been presented to us, a full cost recovery program. So if you decide, or if this board decides to not go that route, then you will have to decide what in the budget you're going to cut. Because Gary's been very clear that we don't have the funding to not do this as a self-funded program. And we're dancing around something because it's a bit uncomfortable, because it will inconvenience some people, and some people will like it and some people will not like it. But the bottom line is staff have followed what we instructed based on the input that we got from different factors of the community. So I'm fine with what has been presented, and I think we need to move forward with it as is. And the new board will, before July, will make the decision as to what the final amount of the fund will be, and the charge will be. And I'll remind them again that if it is not the full cost recovery, something else will get cut. Thank you.
And I agree with Ken. I'm ready to move it forward. I'd love to have your vote, Paul. I don't see it the way you see it, but that's who we are. So all I know is I want to get this moving, and I want to at least set up the mechanism to collect a fee, which can be determined by the future board. And I think that's what this does. And I don't want to complicate it. And it does get, I'll make it simple, stupid, isn't that right?
Keep it simple, stupid, KISS.
Yeah, right.
Engineering principle.
Right. Paul, did you want to say?
I just wanted to say that I think, again, I think there's I think there is a distinction to be made here. And I think the words you just said are a majority of the cost. If you want to establish a fee to collect the revenue, that's the most expensive part, which is really the why. But the why I heard from the community was a different why, protect the neighborhoods, and that's a lower cost.
See, that's where I think you're wrong. I think the enforcement be the more costly. I think once the software's created, it's a matter of logging on, filling out the paperwork and turning it in. And I think what we think is going to be very expensive can be paid for by tourism revenue, not the person getting the registering nor the county. It will be the revenue itself will pay for that service. It's for that person or those persons who manage the system.
Yeah, there's
And that- Go ahead.
a three cost component here. There's collecting the revenue from TRT, there is enforcement, and then there is the administrative cost. And that's why we're looking at the figure that we're looking at, because you've got to have people doing the administrative part of it. And that's part of the cost, and that's not going to go away. So again, if you don't actually have a full cost recovery program, then something in that program doesn't get done, or you cut something else someplace else. I mean, it's simple.
Or
Well,
something in that program pays the cost.
Yeah, if the TRT was funding this and the backstop financially was TRT, I'd be there. But Thursday, Jim, you said it can't do that legally. So I'm hearing conflicting things. And I don't think it's simple. All due respect, this is not simple.
TRT is there for tourism promotion. That's what it's there for. It's not for this. We've had that argument multiple times. TRT is not for this sort of thing. It is there for promoting tourism by the rules. Now, if we want to get some money out of tourism for other things, then we add a higher TRT, and that piece can be used for whatever we want to use it for. But until you do that, as the rules stand currently, the TRT has to be used for tourism. I mean,
It's administrative expense. There is an administrative 20%, or what is that, Gary?
I'm sorry, I don't know offhand. 10 or 15%, I thought.
All right. Okay, well, we'll do some checking. Paul, you do some checking and we'll talk about it when it comes back up. Or if we need, I don't really want another work session, please, on this. Gary.
And Commissioner Fisher has her hand raised too. So if it's about this, go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. So just one other piece. I agree with Paul that we need to look at the neighborhood issues and code enforcement and making sure that the resources are there to cover that. I think that's really, really important. The piece that we haven't talked about is potentially the option of increasing the violations, the cost of a violation to help fund that. And so, I mean, I'm okay with a policy that basically says to the greatest extent possible, tourism covers the administrative costs of collecting the fee, and that a framework be proposed for cost recovery for enforcement of the regulations. I mean, I'm okay with that. I mean, I think that's kind of in my brain, what we've been talking about all along. So I don't see a problem with that. But I would like to have Paul's vote on this, if that would get us there. I don't know that that's going to change anything that we've already talked about.
Yeah, well, you're right. Remember, the fee really can pay tourism, a person or two in tourism, to collect and manage the system, so it's outside of that. And then planning or DTD does the enforcement, and this funds that. And then I think that a fine for not registering should be significant. So like $1,500 or something like that, or $2,000, and people will register. And that's what I think is important. Anyway.
Well, and fines for violations. So if you violate the regulations, then people could be fined for that. And that would help create revenue to keep the code enforcement going.
True, true. All right. So Gary,
Sorry. So commissioners, I'm going to ask that you let me bring this back to issues next Tuesday so I can have staff present, finance, DTD, and tourism.
okay,
I'm going to respectfully ask you not go to staff because it's confusing them. We need to hear direction from the board, which I love you all. You keep changing your minds. So I just need to know where you're at as to staff on what exactly you're asking us to do. So can we hold this till next Tuesday so I can have staff present? You can talk this through. Would that be okay, please?
sure. Yes,
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And I would just respectfully say, honestly, if you listen to the words you all each spoke and you look at the language in the proposal in the packet, you will realize that you're not all saying the same thing and it's not in alignment with what is in the packet. So we are not saying the same thing, nor are we aligned with what's in the packet, the proposal. Thank
all
you.
right. So Sonia, 12 o'clock. And then Martha and Ken are going to the veterans event. So they won't be here this afternoon. And so see you at 1:30 and Sonia and maybe Paul, 12 o'clock. Recognition.
I'm going to be, I'll do the best I can. I have a NACO transportation meeting at noon. So I'll be watching the employee recognition, but I will also be listening to the NACO thing, unless it ends early. If it ends early, I'm all in.
It'll mostly be Sonia reading a very long list. I'll
So-
introduce you, Sonia, and then we'll read the list and ask, like I guess Martha did last time, if anyone would like to say anything, please raise your hand and we'll move on. All right, thank you. See you at 1:30, the other two.